Hi Algebra. In this lesson you're going to be working on solving equations, but we're going to take it like by chunks, one chunk at a time. Here we go. All right, in our first equation here, number 1, we have 20 minus 3p equals 2. And this little note is showing us how to break this into chunks. We're going to think of 20 minus what, we're going to cover this up, equals 2. So I'm going to do it like this and use this blue square. I'm going to cover it up. 20 minus what equals 2. And I know that that's going to be 18. So that means that this chunk right here, 3p, has to equal 18. Or down here I'm going to write it as 3p has to equal 18. So what does p have to equal? 3 times what number equals 18? That's going to be 6. So when we say solving an equation by breaking it into chunks, we looked at this chunk right here, 3p. We knew that that piece had to equal 18, and so then from there we found out that p equals 6. In number 2, we have 20 minus, in parentheses, a plus 10 equals 2. And again, we're going to think about this in chunks. We're showing this picture down here. They're covering up the stuff in parentheses. So I'm going to use my blue square to do that. And so I'm thinking 20 minus what equals 2. And again, we know that that's going to be 18. So that means that the stuff in the parentheses, a plus 10, has to equal 18. And if a plus 10 equals 18, what number plus 10 equals 18? And that's going to be 8. In number 3, I'm wondering 20 minus what, again, gets us 2. And so I'm covering up that x over 2 part, and I know that that part is going to have to be 18. So I know that x over 2, or x being divided by 2, has to equal 18. And so now down here, I'm thinking what number divided by 2 gets me 18? And that's going to be 36. And the way I did that here is I thought, okay, what number divided by 2 is 18? I actually multiplied both sides by 2 to undo that division. And over here, those 2's would cancel out to just be 1, and I get 36. In number 4, very similar, thinking 20 minus what gets us 2, because this whole part is going to be, we know, 18. And so I uncover that, and I know that 30 minus n has to equal 18. And so I'm wondering 30 minus what number gets us 18? And from there, I know that n is going to have to be 12. To figure this part out might be a little bit of trial and error. You might be using a calculator. 30 minus what gets you 18? But think about what you know. Like, you know that 30 minus 15 is 15. And I'm getting close to 18 there, so I would keep adjusting that number to get 12. In 8a, Imani thought of a number, we'll call that n. She added 4, and she divided that entire result by 2. Here they just want the expression, so no equal sign with it. Over here in b, J added that the whole thing was going to equal 14 because that was her final result. So now it's an equation, and we could solve it. So I'm going to break this into chunks. The first thing I'm going to do is think about what number, I'm covering up the top, divided by 2 gets us 14. And so I know that that top part needs to be 28 because 28 divided by 2 is 14. And so I move this. I can see now that n plus 4, that top part, needs to equal 28. And so now I'm thinking what number plus 4 gets us 28? And that's going to be 24. For the equation here, he thought of a number, he multiplied it by 3, then added 10, doubled the result, so multiplied all of that by 2, and got 62. So there's our equation. Here I wrote the equation, and we're going to break this into chunks, which means I'm just thinking about 2 times what number gets us 62. And I know that that has to be 2 times 31 is going to get us 62. So I move that away, and I know that my 3n plus 10, that part needs to equal 31. But now we have another step to do. We have 3n plus 10 equals 31. So I'm going to cover up, and I'm breaking this into chunks, what plus 10 gets us 31, and I know that that is 21. And so now I know that 3n has to equal 21. So 3 times what number gets me 21? And that's going to be 7. Here's my equation. She thought of a number, added 6, divided all of that by 2, subtracted 4, and got 0. So that's our equation. I'm going to break it into chunks. I know that if I just look at this piece, I know that 4 minus 4 is going to be 0. So all of this underneath my blue box has to equal 4. So here's what I'm looking at now. All of this needs to be 4 in order for this equation to equal 0. So what number divided by 2 equals 4? So I'm covering that part up, and I know that 8 divided by 2 equals 4. So that means I know that this piece right here, n plus 6, has to be 8. So here's my new equation. And I'm thinking, what number plus 6 equals 8? And from that, I can see that n is going to equal 2. So there you have it, algebra. That's the start of us solving equations by breaking things into chunks. So keep using that strategy. Cover things up with boxes, cover things up with your fingers, whatever you need, and keep asking questions. Take care.